Good evening. I'd like to open up the meeting for Bedford Township for October 2nd, 2018. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Tinneberry, if you would like to open us up in prayer, please.
Shall we pray? Heavenly Father, we thank you for the privilege that we have to live in a country where we can openly discuss and decide the issues that impact our lives. We're thankful, Father, for the peace that you offer us through your Son. And Father, as we ask for wisdom now for the decision makers before us, we pray that you would just richly grant them wisdom, you would give them courage, you would give them the ability to just make wise decisions for the issues that are on the agenda tonight. And now we can pray these things in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. Okay, item 2, approval of the agenda. I have a couple of things I'd like to add that were last minute. One is to add the discussion under new business 8B, the discussion of a contract with Mulch King over there off of Smith Road, the new compost station. And I'd like to add under 8C, the discussion to waive the BZA and planning fees for the Bedford Blizzard Fest. It's something that's going to be offered free to the community. They're both nonprofit, and I just would like to see those fees waived, so if we could add that to the agenda under 8C. I'll look for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda with the 2 additional items.
Second.
Okay. Motion and second, discussion. Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Perrone?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Item 3, consent agenda. The agenda committee reports. A, the committee recommends to the full board to approve and place on file the minutes of the September 18, 2018 regular meeting of the Bedford Township Board.
Motion to approve the consent agenda submitted.
Support.
Motion is supported by Mr. Clemens. Discussion. Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Perrone?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Item 4, presentations. We have none. Item 5 is public comment. Comments limited to 2 minutes for board agenda items only. So come on up. Okay, seeing none. Number 6, staff reports. A, request for approval of the preliminary resolution requesting county assistance on the sewage disposal system. Mr. Sergo.
Tim Sergo, Deputy Drain Commissioner, representing David Thompson, Drain Commissioner for Monroe County. As you know, we went back to the state to get some additional funding, and therefore this board will need to reapprove a resolution, I guess officially requesting the money through bond counsel, financial advisor. It's the second half of the money to do the whole project.
Is that microphone on?
I think so.
Green button, okay. Mr. Francis, did you have anything you'd like to
Well,
add?
we've done this already for the first phase, where we approved borrowing $12 million at 2% interest from the state of Michigan. That's a great interest rate. The project came in at about double what we thought it was going to be because of the increase in the economy and everybody around the state and probably nation had all these proposals and projects sitting on the shelf waiting for the economy to boom, and when it did, everybody comes in and wants the same thing at the same time. And there's a limited number of contractors that can do that work, so it just raised the price. So be that as it may, we needed another $12 million or approximately that amount. So we asked the state, and they agreed to loan it to us at 2% again, which is a tremendous rate. In order to set that in place, there are two or three things we need to do, and you have it all on your handout. One is to approve a preliminary resolution to ask the County of Monroe for their assistance, because they would be the ones that would be selling the bonds that we would be paying for. So that's the first item. We'll need to vote on these to approve them. The second item is, that's 6A. 6B is the actual contract between the township and the county that said, in effect, that they're going to issue the bonds and Bedford's going to pay for them. The third item, which is 6C, is approving the contract and then authorizing the publication of it, a notice to the public in the newspapers, and all three of those things need to be addressed and done.
Okay, any questions or discussion?
Here he is.
Here, I was trying to make a timely entrance and I failed.
Yeah. Pat, that's your usual step.
This is Patrick McGow, our bond counsel from Miller Canfield.
Well, thank you for being here.
Yes, sorry I'm running a little bit late. If you want, I can talk a little bit about the resolution, or I know that Mr. Frederick has a question already teed up, so.
Do you have a question?
My standard question, counsel, are these documents in legal form and enforceable by their terms?
Yes, they are.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Just a recap, this is really kind of a repeat of what you approved in the spring for the first phase of the project. And it's really essentially the same terms of the financing as well. As you know, that project was financed through the state revolving fund at the discounted federally subsidized rate of 2%. That was a borrowing that was authorized for an amount up to $12 million. And essentially, this is the same arrangement with the state. The program is also at 2% again this fiscal year, which is good, because it has been as high as 2.5% in past years. Essentially, what you're doing here is authorizing the issuance of the bonds up to the $12 million amount. And Tim may have already talked that hopefully we come in.
I didn't. We didn't get
Okay,
that far.
we didn't
but-
get that far.
But if we don't use the money, we won't borrow the money, won't have to pay that.
Yeah, the
for a
way,
portion of it.
the way this program works is that you only borrow the amount that you need for the project on a drawdown basis, so we're not as worried about what that amount is. And as we get closer to the actual closing, the state really requires us to downsize the borrowing to the amount that's needed for the project cost. So it's not like there's going to be extra money involved. But given how between the increased costs of steel and aluminum and the labor market, we wanted to put a little bit of a cushion in there and a buffer above what we thought the project cost was going to be, because until we get that, we're really not certain several months down the road. So essentially what the documents before you do would be essentially to authorize the beginning of the process for the financing. It approves the contract, which is very similar to the last one, which is to authorize the borrowing in the amount up to $12 million. The county would issue the bonds through the state revolving fund, and then you would pay that back over 20 years. We were able to sort of delay the start of the payments. The state has rules on that, but the idea is to try to push that back a little bit, because you've got some other debt that's going to be paid off here in the near future, and it also alleviates that burden. So the actual principal isn't going to start getting paid back until 2021, and the interest payments will start in the fall after the borrowing is completed. So that's essentially what the terms of the financing are, and I'll let Tim talk any more about the project and where it goes from here.
Yeah, we just need to take questions, I guess.
Okay, any questions? Okay. Well, I look for a motion on 6A then?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the preliminary resolution to request the county assistance as presented.
Support.
Okay, motion is supported by Ms. Tinnevery. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery? Aye. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Richburger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Item 6B, request for approval of the Act 342 contract between the county and Bedford Township. Mr. Francis?
This is a lengthy document. I think it's 11 pages long. You've all, I'm sure, memorized every word.
Yep.
I move that we approve this contract as presented.
Support.
Okay, motion is supported by Ms. Tinneberry. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry? Aye. Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0. Item 6C, request for approval of the resolution approving the Act 342 contract and the publication of the notice. Mr. Francis?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve this resolution as presented.
Support.
Okay, motion is supported by Ms. Tinneberry. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry? Aye. Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Anything you guys would like to add?
Nope.
Thanks for being here, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, item 6D, request for approval of a road closure resolution at Dean Road between Monroe Road and Freeman Street, and Freeman Street between Dean Road and Summerfield Road.
This is for Fire Station Number 2, and they asked for the same closure last year. So I'd like to make a motion that we approve the resolution for the road closure of both Dean and Freeman on October 13th from 7:30 to 1:30 for Fire Prevention Day.
Support.
Okay, motion is supported by Mr. Clemens. Discussion? Ms. Tinneberry?
The Dean Road between Monroe and Freeman is just that short distance in front of the fire station, but if people start down there, they can't turn on Freeman, so wouldn't it be, what about closing it except to homeowners on there at Secor? Because someone coming through, they don't know that it's closed. Are you gonna put the closed sign down on Secor so that people know? Oh, good. I'm just concerned about myself and my husband because we drive there and
Good
might
evening.
start down there.
Yeah, we're going to have the road commission drop off the barricades. We put them up in the morning. I've been through the neighborhood, tell everybody that lives there that we're going to be having the road closure in that morning.
Okay, I'm worried about people who don't live there that might come through Dean not knowing and get all the way down to Freeman and find out they can't get any farther, they have to turn around.
Well, the barricades can be moved. We want to make sure that it's safe for the pedestrians that are walking in and out of the fire station. So we can move the barricades farther down Secor Road if we'd like.
Okay.
That's an option.
If you find it to be a problem.
So,
I won't go there that day, I promise.
okay.
Thank you, thank you.
Could you call the roll, please?
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0. Item 6E, request for approval to hire Michael, I'm going to mess this up, Konecki,
Konecki,
wasn't even close,
Irish fellow.
as a full-time employee of the Bedford Fire Department through the SAFER grant. Mr. Francis, or Ms. Chief Massengill, come on up. Didn't see you hiding back there.
Good evening. This request is just to fill the fourth position in the SAFER grant. Mr. Konecki was, he retired as a lieutenant from Station 1. He had about 14 years of service with the department. He retired back in, I think, 2003 or 2004 due to moving out of the area. He lives on Morocco Road just outside the district. So he expressed interest for this. Our interview committee interviewed him and recommends that we bring him to you for appointment.
Okay, any questions or discussion? Ms. Tinneberry?
I just want to say, I emailed the chief on this and showed my ignorance, but I thought in case someone from the public saw this and thought that same thing I did, maybe there aren't any like me, but typically a year's employee is 2,080 hours, And he explained to me that the 24 on and 24 off type of staffing for these people end up being 2,808 hours, which I think is a lot of hours for someone, but they do get 4 days off after their 24 on, 24 off. So I just thought in case someone thought like I did, that was a typo, but it wasn't.
Okay. Mr. Frederick?
This fills a complement of 4 now.
That's correct, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I look for a motion.
Mr. Supervisor, I'll make a motion to accept the recommendation of Michael Kuniski for the amount of $48,500 in annual base wage plus the benefits afforded to the full-time employees per the document provided by Chief Messingale.
Support.
Motion is supported by Mr. Clements. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clements?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Item 6F, request for approval for Wolverine State Concrete LLC to install the new service doors at Fire Station Number 2. Chief Massengill?
Yeah, in the last meeting, you approved the purchase of the doors to address a life safety issue we have over at Station 2 with the exiting of the building. We worked extensively to try and come up with 3 bids. Ultimately, we were able to come up with 1 bid. We went so far as to contact the supply house down in Toledo at the recommendation of each contractor that I tried to solicit bids from, and each of them, I think I spoke with 7 of them, each of them said that they were booked through the fall, and they recommended someone else. So I worked through the list. Ultimately, I contacted the supply house down there and received some recommendations from them as well. I'm unable to bring more than 1 bid simply because the indication I got from every contractor short of these folks is that they were booked through the winter.
Okay. I look for a motion. Ms. Tinnevery?
I'll make a motion, but I also have a question. I move that we accept the bid of $4,000 from Wolverine State Concrete LLC, Dundee, Michigan, for the installation of the doors to the fire station.
Support.
Okay, motion is supported by Mr. Clements. Discussion? Ms.
Yeah.
Tinnevery?
I'm wondering, do these people supply insurance?
Yes.
Okay, that's all.
Chief, I have one question. Is there any reason to believe that this bid is excessively high or out of line with the other conversations you had?
I don't believe so, no. I think for the work, it's an all-inclusive work, which includes the drywall repair, the installation, the block work to cut the block walls out, replace the block, install the doors, as well as repairing all the drywall.
And that includes material, too.
Correct.
Cool. All right, thank you.
Mr. Peroni?
Mr. Steiner?
Just a quick comment, Chief, and I know you did your due diligence on this. I would say just maybe going down the road, you contacted XYZ company, just maybe list them there, just so if anybody questions it, we've got your answers up front.
Sure. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, could you call the roll, please?
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Clements?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Item 6G, request for direction regarding the adoption of a policy manual for the fire department. Chief Massinga?
Yes, this was in regards to the safer grant position. So this is a different course for the fire department. We developed an appendix to our policy manual in which it addresses full-time firefighters and the things that Ms. Tinnevery were speaking of, the 24-hour shifts and things like that, that don't really fit into a conventional policy manual for employees. Would dictate things such as working from 8 to 5 and that sort of thing. So we got some feedback from the board. We ultimately sent it up to our labor counsel, Mr. Nance, and he indicated that he believed, and there's a typing error which mathematically doesn't work out, but that's 20 to 40 hours of his time that correlates with the dollar amount on the in the request there, not 20 to 30, as I indicated. It was a mistake. But He suggested that he prepares a detailed comparison of the proposed appendix with a number of existing township documents in order to identify deviations. He goes on to say that he would then prepare recommendations and suggestions and forward them for review and consideration. He also suggests it may be desirable to arrange a meeting with the Personnel Committee and ensure that they fully understand the step being proposed, the rationale and the implications moving forward. He said, he indicated the 20 to 40 hours at his regular rate to do that review. So I'm just really looking for the direction or the pleasure of the board.
Well, I'll speak a little bit. Chief had called me, and we talked about it a little bit, and we had we've run into a couple situations where we've kind of been sticker shocked a little bit with some of the things that we've done. One was the Teamsters contract. You know, it was coming at almost $10,000 for that contract negotiations. So I said we need to start getting bids of how much time it's going to take. So that's what he come up with, and we kind of were like, well, you know, we're looking at $6,000 for him to look over a document. Now, does that include looking over the document and making changes, and or is it we going back and forth now with it, and he's going to end up, you know, even more time?
To my knowledge, the 20 to 40 hours, as he indicated in the email that I shared with the board, were to do just those things, including arranging a meeting if necessary with the Personnel Committee.
Okay. Mr. Frederick?
I may have started this. I want to be absolutely clear. This is a unique situation within the fire department. I am not suggesting that this was not a professional job that you put together. I'm not suggesting that it isn't of good, high quality. However, this is under the SAFER grant, essentially. That's further, this is a departure from the standard process within the fire department. I believe that we should have Labor Council look at this and assure that we don't have any errors of omission, not because we didn't think of it, but sometimes Labor Council looks at these kinds of documents differently. I believe that to be sure we don't have a problem down the road that would cost us 3 or 4 or 5 times whatever his cost would be to review this document, may never happen. May all go through the 3 or 4 or 5 years, however this is. The SAFER grant's only for 3. Nothing may happen. But I just believe we put in a penny to save a pound down the road. I really believe. I understand the fact that council, including my colleague here, you know, they have to run a business like everyone else. But this is an important appendix. We want to be sure that it doesn't conflict with other arrangements that we have with other employees within the township. And to the extent if it does, why is it different? So we can understand it. Those are my thoughts, and I believe we should send it to Mr. Dance for a thorough review. Thank you.
Ms. Tinneberry?
How did you come up with this policy? Did you just dream it up or sit down with Doug?
We borrowed large parts of it from another local fire department.
Another fire department that had an attorney oversight on that.
To my knowledge, yes.
And what about the policy prior to this?
The policy prior, we've never had a policy prior to that. This would be in addition to what generally would be our standard operating guidelines or policies.
Right. And I know for a fact that that was reviewed by, I don't know if it was Labor Council, but it was an attorney when the board drew that up. So in my mind, we can, forgive me, Phil, it's not about you, we can attorney things to death. I mean, and I understand Lamar is a former attorney, so he's, in my mind, of that mindset. But I read through this, I'm not an attorney, but and it doesn't necessarily correlate with our personnel policy because our personnel policy excludes the firemen. So, and that was done under a prior board. And so I think that sometimes we can we can just take matters out of our hands, put them in an attorney's hands for, you know, to take away our responsibility. But I'm hoping everyone here read it, and if they saw anything wrong or discrepancies, or surprisingly, I didn't find any, which I was shocked, because I usually scrutinize everything with a fine-tooth comb. But I mean, it's up to the board, but I am not in favor of spending another almost $7,000 for someone to read this and say, wow, that was pretty good.
Chief, could we find out if the labor attorney wrote it?
I could try, yeah, I could inquire as to whether.
Because, I mean, if just they're, like you just said, Chief Massigno and Mr. Steinman wrote it, and, you know, and like another fire department, you know, we could, you know, run into issues, I guess, possibly, you know, because the labor attorney's going to find things that, you know, we wouldn't see, you know, or probably Mr. Goldsmith wouldn't see. Mr. Clements?
I think there may be a middle path here. I agree with what both Lamar and Nancy have said, but I think that asking a labor attorney to review, to compare, to rewrite, the 20 to 40 hours is excessive as a first look. To me, the obvious question is, this is our policy. Is it or is it not in keeping with best practices under similar circumstances? I'm guessing that most comparable or competent attorneys could get that done in far less than 20 hours. At that point, if there's all kind of red flags waved and there's problems noted and issues cited, then I think we have to have a more substantive conversation. But I know there's a lot of due diligence that went into putting this together. I don't think it's an all or nothing. I think that, quite honestly, we could ask a different question, likely get the answer that we're looking for without having to embark in a potential 40-hour exploration on a policy that largely has already been written and reviewed. And I would like to throw that up as an alternative, as opposed to feeling like we have to go nothing or all at this point.
What's your time frame on getting this done?
We would certainly like to have it done when the period of performance is set to begin for the grant, which is early November. So, yeah, so if we could.
Could we get through one more meeting?
I would think so.
Maybe we will find out if a labor attorney wrote the one that we have, and if that's the case, then more than likely, we're set. Mr. Francis?
Well, it depends on when the attorney wrote it, because those laws change all the time. We want to make sure that what we put into place now is not in conflict with current law. And I don't know how old this is. It looks very well done. Maybe we could, and I feel like Lamar does, that this is something set, a policy that we're setting in place that we hope is going to last a long time. And I think we ought to do it right the first time. But maybe we could talk to Mr. Nance and say, hey, how about we put a lid on it, a limit, $5,000 or something? Or have him take a look at it in close detail. I don't know if he's seen it. Has he seen the whole thing?
Yes,
He's not going to come back and tell us 20 to 40 hours if he doesn't think it's going to take him 24. You know, it's kind of like you know, that's his process he takes. I mean, he's going to do it. If we tell him 5,000, we're only going to get, you know, I think if you go back and find out, maybe they've done provisions to this over the years, maybe a couple years ago or last year, maybe it is up to date. I think we need to find out a little information from where we got it, you know, and if that's the case, Ms. Tinneberry?
Where did the adopted June 1st, 2017 come from? Was that left on the other one that you copied? Just kidding.
The June 1st, 2017, that would be.
It's typed on there.
Yeah, that was a previous policy that didn't include the appendix.
Oh, okay.
So that's because instead of just completely rewriting the entire policy manual, we assumed that we would just make an appendix to it. So that was a previous version. For simplicity, we were hoping to add it.
So maybe he could just look at the appendix. I mean, if this was effective June 1st, 2017, I don't know how many laws would have changed in a year and a half.
Phil, do you have an opinion on this?
I haven't been included in the process, and I have not seen Appendix A, so
Okay.
I don't have an opinion. If you would like us to review it, we could review it.
Your microphone's not on.
Sorry. So, let me start again. I haven't been provided with the appendix, nor have we been asked to review it, so I don't have an opinion on it. I could review it if the board would like, and provide an opinion. I've worked with Mr. Nance for 35 years, so, and do a fair amount of labor work. He's the expert, that's all he does. That's his niche in the legal field. But whatever the board, whatever the pleasure of the board is.
Do you feel like 20 to 40 hours is excessive?
I really can't say that without having reviewed the appendix. I think most of the time is going to be spent what I'll call dovetailing this with existing policies and procedures to make sure that there are not inconsistencies and to make sure that this policy is going to apply as the chief intends it to apply, and that there aren't other written documents that would conflict with this. That's my main concern. You don't want another document conflicting with this document, which could cause an argument as to which document applies and under what circumstances, which could cause the township heartburn.
Are you qualified to act as a labor attorney?
I've done a lot of labor work. I would defer to Mr. Nance. That's all he does. That is all he does. So.
I'm just wondering why we're paying two different lawyers if it's.
Well,
What other documents, though? I mean, we don't have any other documents except the, what did you just call that?
Our standard operating guidelines.
Standard operating guidelines.
The SOPs, the standard operating procedures, you want to make sure that they don't conflict with this appendix. There have been instances in the past where I've seen conflicts when we have a situation arise and then I'm asked to review it, and okay, what applies, the SOP or another policy that has been layered on over the years. I think that's Mr. Nance's concern. I'm speculating as to that, but.
Would you feel comfortable looking over this instead of Mr. Nance?
I'd feel comfortable looking at it, but I may reach the same conclusion as he does, that we have to look at all the documents that are at play there. I'm not uncomfortable in looking at it, and many times Mr. Nance and I have worked together when labor issues have come up, especially with the fire department, where we've had situations where it's been recommended to this board where firefighters, their service to the township be terminated. You know, we very carefully review those matters and make sure that the proper steps are followed so that the township avoids liability in those instances. So we work together in those situations many times.
Okay, Mr. Frederick was next. You still have a question?
I don't have a problem if Mr. Goldsmith looks at it. Again, we're talking about an appendix added to a standard operating procedure that may or may not have conflicts within the package. This is the first step of maybe many steps to a full-time fire department. We are now putting people on full-time for 8 hours a day. We need to be sure that as this document is in shape today, that we don't have a problem 3 or 4 or 5 years down the road. That's why I'm suggesting, I don't like cut and paste and this one came from this document and this one came from another one, and we cobbled up a bunch of stuff. Now, I used to do that years ago too, but in the end, you have to look at the document within its 4 corners. And I don't, again, I really believe that a lawyer should look at this, point out the areas, if any, that are inconsistent with the SOP itself, and fix it. That's my view. And if Mr. Goldsmith is willing to step up, that's fine with me. I don't care who does it. It just needs to be done to assure that we don't have a problem arising in the future that is more expensive than I know it's always tough, a few $1,000s for a lawyer to look at something. My view.
Ms. Stenberry?
Well, what's the difference in time and dollars between Mr. Nance and Mr. Goldsmith? I mean, I'm not interested in adding another attorney to the whole process. You know, that doesn't make sense to me. I like TC's idea that it would be a perusal, because also Mr. Nance said that he would then meet with the Personnel Committee to discuss all this, so there's more hours. You know, I mean, once he goes over it, we're saying, basically, we don't have any knowledge, so what good would it be to go over the Personnel Committee? Because basically, you don't have any knowledge, so to me, it's kind of a waste of everybody's time. If he's gonna do it and send us your thing, and then the board will decide, but I don't know. My question is, what's the difference between Mr. Goldsmith in time and money and Mr. Nance in time and money? Are you saying that Mr. Goldsmith can do it in less than 20 hours? Or?
Well, he's cheaper hourly.
Yeah, I know, but if
Mr.
it takes
Stein?
him longer to do it, what's the point?
Mr. Steiner?
Hey, you got to me.
Oh, sorry.
No, I actually was thinking sort of along the lines of what Mr. Clements had stated, and Ms. Timbery's got a point there. And instead of creating this back and forth document, if we take the initial document, which is the appendix, and if that alone can be looked at, and I know what, you know, Mr. Goldsmith's saying about, you know, making sure this doesn't have a conflict with this other document in this area, but initially, they could take the appendix and say, well, this would be one area to cause a flag. We need to compare it. This area would cause a flag. We need to compare that. And some of that could be turned right back over to the chief and the Personnel Committee to look at and go right to the original policy, find it, and say, you know, Mr. Goldsmith or whoever was, well, correct by pointing it out, but there's no conflict. Scratch it. There's no change. So we wouldn't have to have all the going back and forth. And again, Mr. Goldsmith's rate is less. I know that Mr. Nance has done a lot of work for the township and has stated, you know, that's his job, is labor. But I think at this level, and since the document was sort of another department policy, which I'm sure Chief Massaguel has looked at, I would be very comfortable with Mr. Goldsmith doing that initial review and point out those areas that could cause the conflict that we can review.
Okay, may I look for a motion?
Okay. I move that we submit the Bedford Township Fire Department Administrative Policy Manual, and that has not been adopted, so I'm not going to say that, to our attorney, Leonard Grammons Goldsmith, for a cursory review, to come back to the board. Can you do it by the next meeting or not? Because the reason I say that is because Trudy knows that after the next meeting, we won't have a meeting for 4 weeks because of the election.
Yeah, we'll make it a priority. We'll do it, and because I know the chief wants to get it up and running.
That's what I was thinking.
So, yeah, we'll do it. We'll make it a priority so we can discuss it. Who knows, maybe we can have it ironed out for you by the next meeting.
Does this mean my other items are going to get pushed back now?
Probably.
Well,
I'm just kidding.
unless you want me to work more than the 12 hours a day I'm already working.
No overtime, no.
Well, Paul's going to pay the overtime.
I'll
Okay.
support that motion.
Okay, motion in support of Mr. Clements. Discussion?
Yeah, I got a question.
Question?
The motion said the policy manual.
No.
This isn't the policy manual, this is an appendix to it.
Well, I was reading what it said on the cover.
Cover.
Is that
Yeah.
a friendly amendment?
This is what we're voting on.
Okay,
I think that's what his friendly amendment is
Okay.
because the appendix actually needs to be stated.
Do you accept the friendly amendment?
Absolutely.
Okay. Could you call the roll, please?
Ms. Tinneberry?
aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Could you send Mr. Goldsmith a copy then? Absolutely. Okay, thank you, Chief, for being here. Okay, item 7A, under old business, request for possible issuance of Class C liquor license. Ms. Hirschberger?
At the last meeting, there was a motion to come back to this meeting and allow the applicant to submit a plan. So, you have the plan?
Mr. Bates, would you like to come on up?
Hi, all. John Bates. I did submit a preliminary plan for a site plan for the proposed facility in question to put a restaurant. Since then, I've read this liquor license ordinance, I don't know, maybe 20 times or so. And I appreciate the board giving me the opportunity to come back up here, give you a site plan. I know you guys were curious on what was going on in the development and how it would help Bedford Township. However, this thing has a lot of approval processes to go through. And I'm also an entrepreneur, and I believe in the entrepreneurial spirit of people. So I would only ask that a consideration be made on a timeline, that if the other applicant is not able to get their facility up and running, that I might be considered in the future. Other than that, I will withdraw my application.
Okay. I appreciate that.
Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Bates.
You should allow the other one to-
Would you guys like to come on up? Coraline, so sorry I didn't recognize you. I seen her, I said, I know you from somewhere. She's like, well, we surfed on planning together.
Jeez.
Good evening. I'm Corleen Bialecki. I am an attorney, and I'm representing Mrs. Elmazi and Jeff LLC, the limited liability company that she has formed to apply for the liquor license. Mr. Bates, thank you for withdrawing. All of my arguments today were going to be to instruct the board on the language in the ordinance and in the notice that the township sent about completed applications and a qualified individual and an LLC that does not yet have a liquor license. I'm simply here now to submit to you and urge you to grant Mrs. Elmazi her application for the liquor license. Her application was complete. She's clearly qualified. She plans to refurbish an existing building. She has a lease in place. She's ready to go. I urge you to grant it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, does the board have any questions? Ms. Tinneberry?
No, I don't have any questions. I was not at the meeting where this discussion took place. However, I did watch the video, and I too appreciate Mr. Bates coming to the same conclusion that I did, because I thought in that discussion, the ordinance, even though I wasn't here, the ordinance states specific things, and if we don't follow our own ordinance, we're amiss. And so I appreciate that our decision is made easier tonight, and I'd like to move, actually, if we're ready,
Okay, go ahead.
that we approve the, okay, I'm not sure I'm going to get to the Jeff's,
LLC.
say it again?
Jeff
Jeff's
LLC.
LLC, request for the liquor license. I'd like to put in the address there too, but I, not knowing that we weren't going to be doing this.
7495 Secor Road.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
To be Class C liquor license for that address and that application.
I'll second.
Okay, motion is supported, discussion. I just want to point out, I think where some of the confusion come in was the last time we handed out a liquor license, we had 3 applicants, and only one was qualified. But the one that was qualified actually had owned other liquor licenses. But that was where it come into play, was the other 2 that had it didn't fully fill out their application or whatever, didn't submit a plan. There was something that, it wasn't, you know, completed or whatever. So that's where it came in, was, you know, how can we, you know, give it to this individual when, you know, so we wanted to make sure we were clear on that, and it, you know, the ordinance states it's very clear, so. Ms. Stenberg?
Might I just add that in the many years that I've been around, liquor license have been a very controversial topic. You know, there's quite a bit of you know, people who want them because it's a good economy money builder, and I understand, you know, Mr. Bates' request. However, in my opinion, I don't think we can say anything that could be done in the future, but certainly anyone who comes with an application, completed, well done, will be considered equally. But it has been a controversial issue in Bedford Township for a long time, and I just believe that when it comes right down to it, we have to follow strictly the ordinance, because then if it becomes politics, it's way out of whack, so.
Well, and I think part of it is, and Mr. Goldsmith, you know, when it says qualified applicant, you know, you can look at that a couple different ways. What makes whoever that's applying a qualified applicant? You know, obviously Mr. Bates is a qualified applicant if he had filled out everything, and, you know, he obviously holds liquor permits, he runs a successful business, had no strikes against him. So that's something that can be construed, you know, a couple different ways. What is a qualified applicant? Is it just when they fill out their paperwork and do everything we say to do in the ordinance, or is it, you know what I'm saying? That's where it can kind of be a little confusing to some people.
You know, and I think that qualification implies that you have operated a facility with a liquor license before, perhaps, or you've been employed by a facility that's operated under a liquor license, because there are certain rules and regulations that the Liquor Control Commission requires that be followed. But in this case, and Mr. Bates and I have discussed this issue since the last meeting. He's called me and we've discussed it, and I've discussed it as the township's attorney and legal counsel. And I think there's a recognition there in this case that he basically is disqualified because he holds currently at least one liquor license in the community. And it's a 2-step process when you look at the ordinance. It states that you're not, you shall not, or the township board shall not issue a liquor license to a person or entity who currently has a license and seeks another license, comma, unless, 1, there are no other qualified applicants, and 2, the township board determines that it is in the best interest of the township to issue the license to the person or entity. So I think you're absolutely right. The last license we dealt with, the township board made a determination that there were no other qualified applicants who submitted an application. And I think under the circumstances, that was a correct, in the interview process, that was a correct determination that was made by the township board. This case is a little different. It would appear that both applicants were qualified. The deciding factor in this case is that one of the very qualified applicants already possesses a liquor license and operates within the community with that license. Now, I will say this, that you may want to consider conditioning the license on opening the establishment within a certain reasonable time frame.
I was just thinking about that sitting here.
Or if you're not concerned with that, then you're not concerned with that. Either way.
Well, I think that protects us, so I don't see why we wouldn't want to do that. I mean, I think their intentions are to open and, you know, run a successful business, so, but I don't know why we wouldn't want to put a 1.5-year window on it, or a 2-year window or something, that if they're not open within, or not operational, or I don't know how we'd want to word it.
Has there been a motion made
Yes.
and seconded?
Yes.
I got a friendly amendment. put the stipulation in of 6 months.
That's too short.
Yeah.
Our
That's
own
way too
ordinance,
short.
own ordinance states that period of time. On page 6, top paragraph.
But we didn't put that on the last one,
I know.
so why would we start with this one?
Page 6. Where?
Of the ordinance itself, which we have a copy of in the folder.
See.
You don't want
No,
6
I don't-
months,
I
make
don't-
it somehow that, it should have a time frame on it.
Well, we should work on that in the ordinance, but I would think, come on up to the mic for a second, would you please?
Mr. Supervisor, while they're coming up, I was going to say, the problem we have here is either we are going to follow the ordinance or we're not. And I came tonight with a difficult decision because I said at the last meeting, I think this ordinance, and I've already asked the clerk to bring this back sometime between December and February, because we have to work on some language. There are some problems in it. That being said, I don't think there's anything prohibitive about us giving a realistic timeline.
Yeah, 6 months isn't realistic.
6 months, I think most of us would all agree, is not realistic.
It says such as 6 months. It
Yeah,
doesn't say-
it's not, you're not bound
Could
by
you give us a
6
time frame that
months.
you would be reasonable?
Within 6 months, we can't finish it.
Okay,
because the
give us a
building
reasonable
itself has
time
to-
frame. What is
No,
a
it
At
reasonable?
least within a year.
It doesn't say. It says
So
on
if we
the
give you
issuance
a-
of a building permit within a reasonable period of time such as 6 months. Will you have your building permit within 6 months?
We should have that within 6 months, but we don't, we
Yeah,
can't
that's what
finish the
Nancy-
whole building within 6
No,
months.
it doesn't
Come on
say
up.
finish. It says just apply for the,
That's too.
Okay, we're not gonna put 6 months on it.
Right.
But if you're saying a year, let's give you a year and a half, okay? And that
We would
seems,
consent to a year and a half time
Okay.
limitation restriction.
would you accept that as a friendly amendment, Mr. Francis?
Well, that was never
Or-
Not my
that would
amendment.
be me.
Or whoever's
Yeah,
amendment, Mrs.
Mrs.
Tinneberry?
Tinneberry.
Yes.
Okay, yes?
Yes.
Mr. Peroni, just to clearly state it here, and to extend on that 6 months, if you continue to read on, it says the renovation of facility within a reasonable period of time, such as 6 months after the building permit is issued for the commencement and 1 year after commencement of completion. So there's, you got to read that whole thing. You
years.
can't just take those, so it's
Yeah.
got some time in there, but I don't have.
But a year and a
problem
half is good for you, though, plenty of time? Okay.
Can we define what will happen within a year and a half?
Doors open?
Hopefully,
That's the plan.
yes.
I think you are complying with your ordinance if you allow that. That's my opinion when you read the entire paragraph, okay? So, that point given,
I would also note, if I may interrupt, Mr. Goldsmith, that extensions may be given on that
Yeah.
time frame also
Right.
in the order.
maybe,
If we're seeing
maybe,
progress,
but
if we're
Honest
seeing
would be
progress,
great.
though, and things are working and looks, I don't see why we wouldn't give an extension.
extensions may be given. It starts out by saying conditional approval could, for example, if allowed by state law and the Liquor Control Commission. So it's going to be conditioned on Liquor Commission approval, okay? So I just want it clarified what they intend to do within a year and a half, should the board decide to grant the application tonight.
Year and a half, good?
Doors open for business, 18 months.
Okay. You accept the friendly amendment, then?
I do.
Okay, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Tinneberry?
Oh, aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Francis?
I,
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye. I think we got hung up in our underwear on this.
Mr.
Aye.
Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. I just want to say,
Thank you.
you know, I think on behalf of the whole board, we're excited for an old building to get rehabbed, for sure.
Very much.
And we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
So,
Appreciate it.
okay. Item 7B under old business, request for approval to move the decision for a new staffing model for the assessing department to future board meeting. I just want to say they are not prepared yet, and I want to table this to the next scheduled board meeting.
Mr. Peroni?
Yes?
As stated in the memo that everyone had, I met with assessing on the 28th and went through what they're looking for, and I made some suggestions if they want the board to even consider that they should look at some specific things and have some deliverables to the board, which they're planning to do.
Which I really appreciate you taking the time on your day off to meet with them. I really do. So,
I have a question.
Ms. Hirschberger?
Rick, will that be enough time, the next meeting, for them to get everything that you were proposing?
It should be, but I can't answer for them to say yes, but it should be
They
plenty
told
of
me,
time.
they told me it would be. If they're not ready, I guess we'll have to table it again, but I would think we'd be ready for next board meeting. I make a motion, we table it.
Second.
Okay, motion in support of Mr. Steiner. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Peroni?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye.
And the motion passed 7-0. Item 8, new business, request for approval of vouchers for payment. Ms. Hirschberger?
I'd like to make a motion that the following vouchers be approved for payment. General Fund, $48,111.02. Fire District Fund, $14,288.32. Police Fund, $115.34. Park Operating Fund, $8,083.05. Transit System Fund, $17,218. Library Operating Fund, $5,920.22. Water Revenue Fund, $6,500. Lewiston Estates SAD, $632.50. Downtown Development Authority, $1,420. Sewer O&M Fund, $5,147.80. Trust and Agency Fund, $7,356.05, for a grand total of $114,774.48.
I'll support.
Okay, motion is supported by Mr. Francis. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Item 8B, discussion on contract with Mulch King. Okay, so bear with me, I'm going to kind of talk about how this is all unfolded. So we've, obviously, the board knows that Mulch King has been going through this process for roughly a year to get their site prepared. We let them start dropping stuff off there before the site was done. The MDQ allowed it. We allowed it because they were removing the stuff off the site within, I think, a timeframe of 30 days or something like that, as a service for the residents. People continue to drop stuff off there for the last year, and the road commission started to question, why isn't the entrance done? And so, come to find out, the cost of him to do his entrance, as is required by the road commission, was gonna cost him around $40,000 that he didn't really prepare for. So he tells me he's gonna have to start charging. And I told him, I said, well, we've always had dumpsters free to township residents, and, you know, this is a service that we've had for free for years. It's been their intentions from you opening that it's gonna be free for them. So we gotta work something out. You know, we obviously don't wanna see him close his doors because he is working on the entrance right now. So the road commission's gonna work with him in getting the entrance done in a timely manner. But in talking with him, I mean, he wants to contract with the township. We pay him right now, so it would be free to the residents, $5,000 to get through the next 2 months to make it free for the residents of Bedford to drop their leaves off. But ultimately, typically, what we would spend in this time right now is about $8,000 in dumpsters for the fall season, for the residents to come drop off their leaves and grass or whatever in the dumpsters. They were a hazard, they were a mess, and that doesn't include the time for our maintenance department to come over and smash the dumpsters down, clean up the mess, and then we'd have to clean out stuff that shouldn't have been in there, as far as garbage or whatever, because people didn't throw what was supposed to have been tossed in there a lot of the time. So ultimately, we have a few options. Okay, I have Mr. Francis, I'm discussing this with Ms. Hirschberger. We had kind of thrown some ideas back and forth, and Trudy's like, well, why don't we just contract with him? And I was like, it's a good idea. So Mr. Francis wanted to make sure we're legally allowed to be competition with a business. If we bring back dumpsters, we're going to be in competition with a business. So that's not something we want to do. So we've talked to him about what can we do to make this work. And so our options are either A, we bring back dumpsters, and we would spend roughly $8,000 probably in the fall to bring back dumpsters. Or we contract with him for the next 2 months for burn season, you know, because we really don't want people burning. Obviously, you can burn per ordinance, but this is gonna, if we have something free for the residents, it's gonna cut back on burning. And then option 2 is, or option 3 would be we don't do anything and we let him do what he's gonna do with his business and charge, it'd be $1 a bag and a maximum of $5 a load each time you come. So you can come with 20 bags in your car, I guess, if you get 20 bags, or you know, 2 bags would be $2. So those are options. I think we need to start the relationship with them and contract with them, so the service is free. But ultimately, starting for a fresh year, what he really wants is $15,000 a year. And then that would get you a resident, any resident in Bedford could drop off their grass, their leaves, their sticks, their brush, their Christmas trees, whatever, up to a certain size of log, then he's gonna charge you. But that would be free for residents year-round. And I've printed you off a schedule of kind of what we spend a year before we had the free drop-off site that I got with the blocks out there. I mean, the last year was 3,200, so you can't really compare it to that. But the years that we had nothing for free back there, and we just had dumpsters, we were spending roughly $8,000 in the fall, and it looks like anywhere from $7,000 to $6,000 in the spring. So, you know, but that's something we can discuss. I told him we're not talking about that tonight. Right now, we're just trying to solve an issue to be able to get the residents a free drop-off site for right now. And then the board's gonna have to, we're gonna have to meet with him and figure out what we can do in the future, what's realistic, what we, you know, can really do here. Because I don't like to see the dumpsters all being dumped into a landfill, for one thing. This is being composted, the people can buy back. You know, and I get from a lot of residents, you mean I gotta rake my leaves, I gotta load them up in a bag, put them in my car, I gotta drive them over there, and I gotta pay him to do that? You know, it seems kind of backwards, but it costs a lot of money to run a compost station. So it's not like scrap steel where you take your load of scrap and they give you a chunk of money to bring your scrap there. I mean, it takes a long time for the process to work, and it's expensive. So this is something that kind of got dropped on me at last minute, so I haven't had a ton of time to be prepared. I've put together as much information. I've gotten a written letter from our lawyers, and I got a contract from him. I get that we don't have much time, but burn season starts in 3 days this weekend. So people are either going to burn or they're going to go drop it off. We've had multiple phone calls. I don't know how many Ms. Hirschberger's had, but I've taken probably 20. And most of them said just bring back dumpsters. So anybody have any questions? I'm sure I missed something.
I do.
Ms. Tinderberry?
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, this was just put on our desk tonight.
I get it.
And I am not going to about to approve this. I mean, in fact, I find some things that really don't make sense, you know.
I won't let you approve that.
Okay, thank you. Well, then
In
we
its,
might.
in its current written form, it needs some work.
It's terrible.
Yeah, it was written today.
Well, not only that, I mean, from what I understand, these places take it in, get it all mulched or whatever, and sell it back. They sell it. They make, so.
They do.
I mean, you know, you're talking about him doing all this for free, but he's making money off of it. I don't know, maybe it's not a good moneymaker, but there's also the option, many of our neighbors have the little thing set out and the garbage guys come and pick it up. So, I mean, there's other options that I mean, I don't know that we need to, I'm not about, well, okay, I can't anyway, so Phil won't let me.
Mr. Francis?
I would strongly suggest that you not. How's that better
thank you.
stated?
Mr. Francis?
Well, I was going to ask who wrote the contract, and I just got the answer to that. I think we ought to have our legal counsel review the contract. and come back to us.
Well, here's what we need to discuss tonight, okay? Is the board willing to contract $5,000 or spend $5,000, okay, to get the Bedford Township residents a free place to drop their leaves off this season, okay? Obviously, in a month from now, you're halfway through burn season, and he's gonna charge people starting this weekend. Okay, so if I could tell him, hey, the board's okay to approve it upon us, our legal team reviewing the contract, upon us, agreeing, on he can start collecting.
You said
For free.
15,000.
That's in the future.
Okay, but why,
That's like for the whole year. This is just to get us through for the next 2 months.
so his contract for the future is gonna be different than this?
Yes. Nancy, listen, this was last minute on me.
Okay, I get it.
I haven't
No,
had a bunch of time, and I thought it was gonna be free just like everybody else did.
I'm not criticizing you, I understand.
Mr. Frederick?
I use it a lot. I'm over there and I see a lot of folks from Ohio that come in. I see a lot of landscape folks who are bringing their stuff in there. I know they are paying for the privilege of dumping there. I heard about this early last week, that the road commission was on them to do what they said they were going to do according to their site plan, which was clear. For $5,000, it's essentially 1,000 trips for our citizens. I don't know how many go there, but I think it's a reasonable request to finish out the year, because I know all about the dumpsters in the back. They get the kitchen sink and everything else in them. And all they end up being is somebody else's dump. And then they end up going to landfill because they can't go to the recycling. So, and I agree, this contract is not acceptable. I mean, you could write a one-page letter that would be better than this, which is simply a services agreement.
It wasn't done by legal. He did it
I know
himself.
it, I know,
so
I'm just saying. So my point is that I think that this is a good opportunity for our citizens to finish out the year. Maybe it will reduce some burning, but it's not going to reduce it all, because I know there's going to be some elderly couple out there that have 500 trees in their backyard. They are not about to pack up 1,000 bags and take them somewhere. That was what we used to get all the time.
I can tell you this.
My view is let's go forward with the $5,000. It's certainly a permissible expense. It's for the benefit of our citizens, so I would recommend we go forward.
I can tell you this, since we've had the easy drop-off site and added on a weekend ordinance, the burning's been cut back. I've had multiple, no, I mean, just from the last year, I've had multiple people call and thank us, for doing this. And so, I mean, I think, I agree with Mr. Frederick. We need to approve this.
And write some letter agreement that's just a one-pager that says this is what we're going to do for the rest of the year, and thank you very much. I don't care if you send him a check for $5,000 right off the bat.
And just so everybody's clear, we did not budget for dumpsters this year. We budgeted $15,000 for spring cleanup. So I've talked with Mr. Francis and Ms. Hirschberger. Something we could do is just cut back on spring cleanup this year, 5,000, give him 5,000. And to be quite honest with you, I'm not so sure we need to do spring cleanup every year. Spring cleanup is the opportunity to clean out all the old junk in your property. If you did that last year, why do we need to hold it again? So that's the way that we don't have to amend the budget, so. Mr. Frederick, do you have a question?
I move that we accept the opportunity to use the Mulch King facility on Smith Road for the citizens of Bedford to deposit their leaves and grasses and other products that are permitted there for the remainder of 2018 for a fee of $5,000, provided, however, that council delivers a letter contract to set out the terms of our agreement.
Support.
Motion, support of Mr. Francis. Discussion. This is something, I mean, maybe you could work with him on and discuss it back. I mean, kind of go back and forth with his lawyer, I guess, and get it figured out.
If this is what the board elects to do, we can have a contract prepared by week's end, because that's the date that he declared to us. And I gotta tell you, I'm disappointed, because he had declared before that this would be a service that would be provided free to the residents, but in my opinion, he's reneged on that. And it's unfortunate, because this township board bent over backwards to put a composting ordinance in place. So, having said that, if the board elects to do that, we can certainly prepare a suitable contract for this year by week's end. And if the board provides authority to the supervisor to execute that contract tonight, that's
Ms. Tenenberry?
the board.
I'm shocked that we are even considering it after our attorney said that he would not let us approve this contract.
Approve the
Number one, pardon me?
As written.
As
But
the way
the
it's
point
written.
is, we don't know that this guy's going to agree to what our attorney writes. What's, I just don't, I'm voting no. I'm not going to go against the attorney. I know I take pot shots at the attorney, but this is something totally different. It was given to us tonight, to read over 2 pages, 3 pages, and then we're making this snap decision. I mean, totally irresponsible in my,
What is your
Okay.
opinion, what's your option of what we should do?
we should
Burnings this weekend.
allow the attorney to draw up the contract, present it to this fella, see if he's interested in our terms instead of all just his terms. I mean, there's contradictory terms in here with regard to residents paying. Here you have to pay, in the following circumstances, the fees will be applied to these items. I mean, anyway.
Yeah, but that's all adjustable, that's all workable.
Well,
But what we're saying tonight
We're
is that.
approving this.
No.
No, we're not. No, we're not. We're
Can't,
not approving anything to
can't
do with
approve
this.
that
What-
as
I
drafted.
said
His
provided.
motion is just for us
provided a
to
contract
contract
is
with him.
prepared.
But you don't know that the guy's gonna, okay, I gave my opinion.
He must be watching, because he just texted me and said, we can adjust it, it's not a legal contract.
If he doesn't agree, he doesn't get the $5,000.
Yeah, I mean, if he doesn't, if he,
He doesn't show up here for us to question. I'm not gonna take a text from the guy.
He's got family issues, and that's
Okay,
why he's not
all
here.
right.
I asked him to be here. Mr. Frederick?
I guess maybe I wasn't clear enough. It's for up to $5,000 for the rest of the year, provided that council prepares a contract for us. Now, if the contract isn't approved until November the 5th or whenever, in the interim, we, as citizens, will pay $1 a bag going through the door. Simple as that.
So, let me make sure I'm clear. After tonight, I can't tell him to let residents take the stuff for free, starting this weekend. Is that what we're saying here?
I don't have a problem telling him, but that's.
Well, I want to be able to tell him, the residents, go ahead and start taking it for free.
Well,
And in a month, if we don't agree to it, we could give him $2,500 or something.
that's right,
And we can work it out,
up to.
okay?
I
It
said
doesn't
up
have to
to.
be this difficult.
Well, I guess the point I was attempting to make is that if he starts charging our residents this weekend, then why would we pay him $5,000? It would have to be prorated to a point where we have an agreement that this board agrees with and he agrees with. So, so I understand what Nancy's stating, that, and if I read her correctly, I think she would like to see a contract prepared, brought back to the board, reviewed by the board and approved by the board, and have it approved by this gentleman and his legal counsel in advance of it being presented to the board. I think if I'm reading her correct, that's what she would like to see.
That's exactly right.
And I don't see anything wrong with that, but residents are going to have to pay him,
Yes.
starting.
Unless he would
Starting
agree, unless he would agree. Let's, I mean, he's the one that sprung this on us.
Yeah, at the
I
last
get it, but the
minute.
residents are the ones that have to suffer because of it.
But we don't want them to suffer. So what I'm suggesting is, and I don't know if the board is even in favor of this versus doing something else, but if the board is in favor of this contingent or conditioned on an acceptable contract, maybe there can be dialogue with this gentleman and say, okay, the contract's going to be presented for board approval at the next meeting. In the interim, will you continue to allow Bedford residents to provide their grass clippings, their leaves, and other, as Mr. Frederick put it, permitted substances at that composting station, because we're talking 2 weeks until the board would do it. That seems reasonable to me, and we wouldn't change necessarily the consideration if he would do that. He's requested that. It's just the contract terms and language. If that's acceptable to the board and him, it's got to be acceptable to him.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying. We don't want our residents who want and have used the composting station, to be penalized either.
Where did Lamar see $1 a bag? I don't see that.
That's what he's charging.
He's charging, if I drop a bag.
Starting October 1st, he's gonna be charging $1 bag and up to $5 total. So you could bring him a truckload and it would be $5. If you bring him 2 bags, it's $2.
Can you get big bags?
You can get big bags, you can mulch them down, whatever, I don't know, I'm not running his business, I just know what I've been told.
Paul, I use contractor bags and I can get a lot of leaves in there.
There's equipment out there, you can mulch,
Yeah.
20 bags down to 1
Yeah.
bag.
I have a
So-
grinder, I use it. My point, and Ms. Tinberry's right, my point was, provided however, that we have a contract prepared by our lawyer to look at. I mean, why would we want to go forward and just pass out $5,000 without a contract?
Nobody's saying that.
Okay, I just want to be sure.
Nobody's saying just hand out $5,000 with no contract.
No, I know, I'm not saying that either, but once we start using this contract, he may not agree to whatever the attorney comes up with. I'm just saying.
Do you foresee the contract we're gonna write changing much? It's pretty much.
I hope
for the
so.
next two. I'm
is
saying.
terrible.
I'm saying as far as the agreement,
Right, one and
it's
an
pretty
hour.
simple. We're gonna pay you $5,000, probably $2,500 for the first half and $2,500 for the second half to get our residents a free drop-off site. It's that simple. You write it legally.
He's getting all kinds of other things, there will be an additional fee, there will be an additional fee, mixed loads are subject to additional fees.
Well, yeah.
Stumps.
If you bring grass and leaves mixed, he can't really accept that. He's gotta separate the two. Mr. Steiner?
We'll tighten up the contract considerably.
One of the things, Mr. Goldsmith, and I just pointed out, the one area that talks about all these additional fees, it does say that those fees will be placed upon the resident for these items that don't fall into the standard accepted waste, okay? But I think it would make sense to have a fee schedule that he publishes. Anything outside the contract that our residents at least know it, but anything that, like the $1 a bag for us, those kind of things should be published as well, if something is not gonna be in the contract. But I agree
What
that,
I would like to see is that, that they will accept all permitted substances, however, we'll define that, grass clippings, leaves, small twigs, branches, things of that nature. All of those things for free to Bedford Township residents who identify themselves properly as a Bedford Township resident with no cost to a Bedford Township resident.
And he would agree to that. Okay, I mean, in the conversation I had today is, when we contract with you, okay, this $5,000 is basically a quarter, 3 installments a year. So the talk I've had with him, that gets the Bedford resident a free drop-off of whatever they need. Okay, now if you bring a log, a 12-inch round log, that he's gonna have to split and grind up, it's gonna cost you. And I think those are the normal things we'll have to, after this 2 months is over, yeah, we're gonna have to, Or maybe the contract you write up would, could be something we do for the whole year. But, the thing is, we've been handing Stevenson's $15,000 roughly a year for dumpsters with no contract that we haven't bid out.
Yeah. We can prepare the contract. I can do it but I can get it done quickly, so
Like
it can
tomorrow?
come back for review by the board. Well, probably by Thursday anyhow. I looked at it when you emailed it over to me late this afternoon, so we can get something done. I can probably do it between 20 and 40
We
hours.
still have to bring it back to you.
That's
20 to 40 hours. Yeah, 20 to 40 hours. Madam Clerk, do we have a standard purchase agreement?
A standard purchase?
Yeah, purchase of services. Do we have a standard purchase agreement?
No.
Well, I probably ought to put one together to solve a lot of problems going forward. You have a
I'd like to
standard
call the
agreement.
question,
Gee.
but
Here we
before
are
doing
spending
that, I'd like to
20
hear
minutes
the
on this thing,
motion.
and we could have, if we had a standard purchase agreement, we'd have been done a long time ago.
Mr. Frederick, can you please reread the motion?
Mr. Frederick?
Lamar, he had the
He
motion.
made the motion.
I move that we contract with Mulch King LLC for the delivery of permitted recycling products by Bedford Township citizens at no cost, but we pay a fee of $5,000, subject to council preparing a contract for review.
Okay,
Not the fee not to exceed 5,000.
okay. Ms. Hirschberger, could you please call the roll?
Wait a minute,
Are you gonna, does that change?
that's different than the first one.
Yeah.
This said recycling material. This isn't recycling material. This is yard waste. Right?
I understood what
I don't remember what I said. Ed.
Well, I know you didn't say recycling material. We're aiming at the same thing.
You are correct.
It's just that this is not recycling material as we determine it, because we have that on Tuesdays out here in the back, recycling.
I'm open to a friendly amendment of anything.
Yard waste would probably be
Yeah.
the more appropriate
Okay.
term. It could be stated either way.
Okay.
I
You-
understand.
You
what
accept
you're
that friendly amendment? Did you seconded the motion, right?
I did,
Could you accept the friendly amendment?
of course.
Okay. Could you please call the roll, please?
So we're going with yard waste, up to $5,000.
Because we don't know when it's going to get accepted.
When, after the contract has been accepted. So we're accepting the contract before we see it.
No, you're going to see
saying.
it.
No. That- My.
Wouldn't it be better just to have the contract and do this at the next meeting?
Right,
I was going to say, I've been kind of sitting here
This is
listening.
really
We-
bad.
If I could have just a second. We jumped through considerable hoops to make this happen. The intent is to come up with a contract to pay this gentleman so that our residents don't have to pay and continue to expect the services they've always had. A reasonable business owner understands that you're dealing with a township government body and contracts don't get signed in 24 hours. It would seem to me that he understands our intent is to go into business and a phone call tomorrow to say we are working on a contract that will be suitable. We agree to the $5,000 terms. Don't implement fees. We'll have you a signed contract and give a date. That seems reasonable to me, and I would have to believe that he's probably going to accept it because I am not comfortable a yes vote to a contract I haven't seen, and I don't know the stipulations or what may be counted on the other side.
Well, I don't think that was the intent. The intent was to bring back the contract.
Yes.
So we're not voting on any contract tonight.
I think TC summarized.
I agree
stated
with
it
you. I
very
like,
well,
fine with that.
Very well, and we need to call him tomorrow. The contract will be prepared, it'll be presented to the board for consideration at the next board meeting. We're going to ask him to allow Bedford residents to continue to deliver yard waste to his facility, just like TC said, and we'll have a contract for you to review and for the board to review, and if everything is acceptable to both parties, then at the next board meeting, I expect that it would be approved.
Okay.
And he takes the risk.
So we need
I
to.
would ask that
we
Lamar rescind his motion, or
You
else
You rescind your motion?
we'll vote it down and TC can make a
That's
motion.
fine.
Wow.
We'll do it next time.
Maybe you
Only
could
if the
text the guy.
seconder agrees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the second-
And I do.
The seconder hasn't done that yet.
Why don't you text him and ask him if that's okay with him?
No, I don't know my phone for you. Okay, so,
Easier yet, what Mr. Clements stated could be added as a friendly amendment, folks.
No, he said he wanted to see the thing first, so that would be next meeting.
Well, but we weren't going to approve the contract before the next meeting anyway, the actual contract. We were never going to approve that
Next one's the 16th, so.
without the actual contract being in front of us.
Point of order, I know Lamar has rescinded. Has Paul also rescinded?
yes.
All right, is it, if everyone okay if I make a re-motion? 3 parts. 1, that we contact the owner of Mulch King, explain that we are working on a contract and his terms. We will have that contract reviewed at the next board meeting, and then we'll provide to him upon execution. B, we're asking that in the interim, he would not charge residents, as he knows we're working on a favorable contract. 3, we would ask Phil Goldsmith to expedite the contract based on the issues that we've discussed this evening.
I'll second.
Oh, go ahead.
okay,
no.
motion and support of Mr. Steiner,
Second for
discussion?
discussion.
Discussion?
And I just want to make a quick comment too regarding this. This is to prevent the citizens from paying a penalty for the yard waste, which we've been trying to provide to them. I too had some difficulties with the way this is worded. And one of the things I want to state too is the township did a lot of work. This went through the Board of Zoning Appeals with numerous, and I say numerous, not a couple, numerous variances to allow this. So I believe that the owner should definitely be willing to work with us because the township did a lot to help them facilitate, to bring that property into compliance and to allow them to even exist on that property.
And he will be.
So
He's a great guy. He's a great guy to work with.
No, I'm not questioning him. I'm just stating,
Yeah.
as good faith on his side, he would agree with that. That's what I'm stating.
Yeah, no, and I don't think he would object to it, so.
I just add one quick thing.
Yep.
That something else we talked about, just for the residents' knowledge, is that we talked about bringing dumpsters back, but after we went over all the extras we paid for the things that they put in that they would not haul away, and how hard it was for a lot of seniors to get into those dumpsters. They were bringing ladders, they were asking other people, and the liability, that's why we went to contracting with Mulch King, just easier for our residents too.
Well, and to add to that, even the dump site we had with the blocks where you could back your truck right into and dump, it was a daily struggle for our maintenance department to pull out bricks and you name it, it was in there, of things that, got dumped. So this is a great thing, it's monitored.
I was just saying, it also prevents, here you couldn't really monitor, whereas over there it's
No.
monitored.
So, I'm excited about it still, so, okay, do you need to call the roll? Could you please call the roll?
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Thank you, board, for understanding and working with me on this one. Ms. Tinnevery, like, yeah. Okay. C, I'm asking that the board waive the fees for the Blizzard Fest committee that is going to be having, I just got a text from, I'm asking, I'm asking the board waive the fees for the Blizzard Fest that's going to be going to planning and zoning in the near future. It was unexpected that they were going to have to go through it because they weren't expecting over 500 people. We could, but it's the first time event, and they didn't think they had to go through. I didn't think they had to go through, but they do because it's a special use on property. So here's what. Do you have a question, Ms. Tamer?
I do.
Okay. Well, let me just.
Okay.
So they're a nonprofit. The church is a nonprofit. Everything is going to be free. the day. It's the 14th and the 15th of December, for 4 hours a night. They're going to have, hopefully, well, we're pretty sure they're going to have an ice skating rink on church property. It'll all be done on church property. A temporary ice skating rink, that's going to be synthetic, so we don't have to worry about weather. There'll be carolers singing there and Dickens, and then there'll be a live movie for kids, and then there'll be vendors outside. There'll be Duke Farms is coming to give sleigh rides, and then Indian Creek Zoo will have a live nativity. So like I said, it's a free event for the public, and $400 fee that they're going to have to come up with is a burden. I've been working for a couple months now with Damon Cecil and Al Pryor to streamline this whole process of festivals. I think it's ridiculous that to have a festival, you have to go before planning and zoning to get these things approved. So we've been talking about a way to get around that, and I've talked with Mr. Goldsmith about it. It would be, you have the fire chief, the ordinance department, somebody from the building department, and somebody from the police department all sit on a committee. We have a form that you fill out prior to going before them. It's open to the public, and they give you the approval, and there is no fee. So I'm working on that. I mean, I'm not here to discuss that tonight. I'm here to just ask that the fees get waived for this. Go ahead, Mr. Tinderberry.
Well, I'm not a millennial. I'm a baby boomer. I don't get on Facebook, so I have no clue what Blizzard Fest is.
It's
Is there-
a group of women that were on Facebook last year complaining about that there's not enough Christmas stuff that goes on. So I invited them in the office last year and said, let's talk about something that we could do. And so they put together this committee. They're with the Monroe Community Foundation as far as where their money goes. So they're organized there.
Wait a minute, so what money? Because
The
if
money
it's free-
the money they'll be collecting to pay $11,000 for a temporary ice skating rink. And the money
Well,
that's
how-
going to be paid to Duke Farms. It'll be free for residents to come to.
What are you checking IDs, or how do you know it's residents?
Well, free for anybody to come to.
Oh, free for anyone to come to?
Yeah.
So what's the money that they're going to get for 11,000? I mean, how are they, donations or?
Donations, yeah.
So is that something you go on Facebook and you find this?
They have a GoFundMe page on Facebook, and they're just soliciting businesses to ask them to sponsor it. They have a sponsoring letter.
Okay, you get that. So, and you said 4 nights, what nights?
2 nights, December 14th and 15th.
Oh, 4 hours a night. What is
4
it?
hours a night. from 5 to
December
9.
what?
5 to 9,
I know, what were the days again? I missed
the
that.
14th and the 15th.
14th and 15th, and is this a weekend?
I believe so,
And what's
yes.
the property that it's going to be on?
St. Paul's Lutheran Church in downtown Temperance?
But this is not a township
No, it's a
supported-
private group. I'm just helping them.
Okay. Oh, well, you can help them. I'm not saying, I just didn't know anything about it. It's the first one,
Well,
right?
you gotta get in touch with what's
I
going on.
am not going on that stupid Facebook. It is disgusting. It's mean and nasty.
I agree.
So, anyway, so, I mean, really, if we're going to waive these fees, don't you think we should know what it is we're waiving? I agree. I don't have a problem with waiving the fees for nonprofit or whatever, but I just wanted to know. I've never heard of Blizzard Fest
No,
before. And they plan on doing this annually?
year, yeah.
If it's successful.
It's gonna be successful.
Okay, so, and $11,000 is, can't you
Yeah.
just freeze the thing in December? Things will be freezing. You just use
Well,
your hose.
one would think so. It could be 70 degrees too.
Okay, well,
Michigan,
thank
remember?
you for your explanation, because I didn't know what it was, so, okay. I'm all for it.
Just a question, have they filed their 501c3 paperwork? Is it a formal entity at this point?
I don't think they are, because they're going through the community foundation.
Okay. Yep, you
They're-
did
and
say
that's
that.
who they're working through with
Okay.
everything, so.
Yep.
They've had a lot of talk about how they wanted to do it along the way, and figured that was the easiest, best way.
Got it.
Mr. Frederick?
Well, who is going to be the applicant then?
I believe
Because you just told me now
Jewel
that
Plant
somebody
and-
else is going to put this all together, but they're going to go through another,
No, no, no. The community foundation is just holds your money. They cut you checks.
Who is the applicant for the,
Tasha Harris and Jewel Patton. They're just two residents from Bedford Township that wanted to do this.
so they're not nonprofit then? The individuals are not nonprofit.
Have they formed an LLC?
Yes, I believe they have, yes.
Well, forming an LLC doesn't automatically
No,
make you,
no.
make you nonprofit.
Well, all their funds, anything for the event goes through the Monroe Community Foundation. And all money that's spent for anything for the event, the checks get cut through the foundation to them.
What's wrong with the Bedford Community Foundation?
I don't know why they went with them,
Well-
they did though. I think because of the staff, I'm not sure.
You know, fundamentally, I don't have a problem waiving the fees, but now I'm wondering who in the heck is the applicant?
Well, the applicant's going to, well, the applicant will be the church, because it's on the
The
property.
church.
The applicant
It's
will be
going to
the
have to
church.
be because it's on their property.
It's on their property.
That would be the applicant.
But the people that are
It
throwing.
has to be the,
Yeah,
it's on their
it will be
property.
the church, but the people that are throwing the festival is Tasha Harris and Jewel Patton.
So they have some kind of arrangement with the
Yes,
church?
yes. They've been meeting with the church, and so have I, since January.
Okay, now I understand it a little better, but I don't know about somebody being a nonprofit. The church itself, if they are in fact registered with the IRS, they are a nonprofit. I don't know if they are or they aren't. You can look on their 990s and see whether or not they are or they aren't. That's neither here nor there. Okay, I understand now. Thank you.
Any more questions?
What are the fees we're waiving, the amounts?
BZA and zoning, I think it's, what was it, 125 for BZA and 275
275,
for
I think,
planning?
for BZA.
275 for BZA, 125 for planning, wasn't it?
Not sure about planning.
I'm not sure, Trudy. Can we just say to waive the fees for? or do
I
we have
just
to say
wanted to
amount?
put it in the.
I'm not 100% sure. Mr. Francis?
Maybe it'd have been nice for them to actually come to the board and
They don't
plead
even
their
know-
own case.
They don't even know I'm bringing it up. I told them I was gonna try getting the fees waived. Like I said, it was last week when we found out they're gonna have to go through the process.
I have no problem in waiving the fees, it's just the process is all screwed up. It's backwards.
That's my concern.
So why don't we just,
Well, the process
Do
of
it.
going to BZA and zoning is screwed up. That somebody to have a flippin' event in this township has gotta go through a nightmare to have one, and that's why we hardly have any events in this township. And half the people that have events don't go through the planning and zoning process. Panning Raid's been, or the Piston Jammer's been having something for 9 years, and the first time I went through was this year. So, I mean, we're trying to even the keel. That's why I'm working with Mr. Goldsmith with this whole process. It's messed up.
Mr. Supervisor,
So-
is it going to be a detriment to the organization between now and the next meeting if we put this on the agenda, they just send us a letter with, these are the specifics, we throw that on the agenda, and then we can approve it?
Yeah, we can. They're just, I mean, the fee.
That won't
they're gonna be
detrimentally
on-
hurt the organization or delay anything on their?
I don't know when, they're scheduled on the next meetings for BZA or zoning.
Well, the
or
next
whatever, so.
BZA meeting will not be till November.
November,
So it'll
okay.
be the first Monday in, wait a minute. Yes, it should be the first Monday in November.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the next one will be the first Monday in December.
Right, which would allow us to
And-
go ahead and,
And hopefully, since we're considering waiving the fees, hopefully it'll be on where there is other variance requests, so it'll limit the impact.
right.
So what's the pleasure of the board?
I would
So is
suggest,
this St. Paul's?
St. Paul's, yes.
I think everybody's agreeing to just bring it back to the next one with their information, and then we'll
Okay.
have everything in
And a
front of
request?
us.
All right, I'll do that.
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, moving on to comments from the public. Comments limited to 5 minutes for each individual. Come on up.
Ken Gagne, 8311 Lambert Street. I'm going to talk a little bit about Mulch King. I'm 99% sure, and it's one of the papers I didn't save, Bedford paper said it was going to be free to Bedford residents. I've been there 4 times. Twice with my trailer, twice with my pickup. Second time I went with my trailer, because I had a trailer, people from Ohio was coming in with a trailer, they charged me $5. And I told the girl, I'm a Bedford resident. She said, we're charging $5. I said, okay. And I called to talk to the supervisor. I ended up talking to Al, and he said, it's his business, he can do what he wants. I said, okay. But what I'm gonna say is, if nobody patronizes him, he's not gonna have anything to mulch.
You're right.
And I heard the supervisor say it was gonna be $5 for 2 months. And then I heard him say it was gonna be $15,000 for next year, if we chose to do it. And then I heard him say it was gonna be $5,000 a quarter. That would be $20,000. Now, it needs to be cleared, what is it going to be? And like I told Al, if we end up being charged to go in there, I'm gonna be a pain in somebody's butt. Because he has a truck body over there for sale. All the logs out on the street should be in the back of the yard. You come out of Ohio, you come into Michigan. Welcome to Michigan. What do you see? In the past, I used to ask the deputy supervisor, how about getting the intersection mowed before the holidays? Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day. It always got mowed afterwards. And I said, that's nice. All the families coming in for the holidays, and all they see is tall grass. It's nice that the property got used. I have no idea where the road commission wants to put the entrance. I definitely wouldn't put it any closer to the light on Smith or the light on Telegraph. You're gonna take it out onto Telegraph, somebody's gonna come over the hill, now you're gonna have an accident. The most likely place, and I talked to a guy that was at my house the other night doing some work, demolishing a garage. I said the best place to put it would be Crab Road. And he looked at me and he said, you're gonna put it over the water and spend $1 million to put a bridge in? I said, look at the worker you're gonna get. He's a contractor. And he's the one that brought up to me that the corner needs to be cleared up. You're gonna have rodent under all them logs over there. That's what's gonna come. And why is the truck body for sale? That's not part of the mulching business. It might have been mulching business to take it off his truck. But why is it sitting there for sale? The intersection needs to be cleaned up. It's nice that he's got there, but go down on Stearns Road, going west, there's a place down there that's got all kinds of stuff for sale. Stone, mulch, everything. They don't recycle there, but the place looks nice and clean. And like I said, everybody that's listening needs to understand, if you don't patronize him and give him his $5, then maybe he'll start paying you $5 to bring it in, because without it, he's not gonna be successful. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments?
Good evening, Logan Tisdale. Several weeks ago, this community suffered a great loss with the untimely death of Mike Pasco. Mr. Pasco was not only a personal friend, but he's extremely involved in his community. He was the 2002 Bedford Township Citizen of the Year. He was involved with numerous organizations such as the Lions Club, Goodfellows, RSVP, Relay for Life, Bedford Park Commission, and was extremely involved with his church, Our Lady of Mount Carmel. He was truly a model of good citizenship and servanthood. He will be greatly missed. Condolences to his family. Congratulations to Lieutenant Tony Cuevas on his retirement from the Michigan State Police Monroe Post. His service to the state and this community is unparalleled. Blessings to him and his family on his retirement. I'm certain that his replacement will be equally dedicated to the citizens of this community and this county. Also, I think one of the things we don't do is we don't recognize the men and women who patrol the roads here for litter. I had a chance to see people out there wearing their vests and everything, walking up and down the roads. picking up debris and litter that people throw out of their cars or accidentally gets placed on our roads and our shoulders. And I don't think we do much recognition of that. They're adopting a highway. They're taking the time out of their day to do a kind of a miserable job, if you ask me, of having to pick up other people's trash and litter. And I don't think we as a community really take much time to appreciate that. But one of the things I can say for sure, Pure Michigan is not going to look like Pure Michigan if we didn't have people like that. And if they didn't go out there and do those kind of services for this community, we'd look like a third world country in a real short period of time. So I'm thankful when I see them out there. I see a lot of red bags along the road, and I'm thankful for those people that come out there. I know when I was a state trooper, I always looked for people who litter our roads, because I thought that was despicable that people would take things and throw it out on our street. And I'm so glad that there are people like that that go out there and do that kind of service to this community. I was walking the other night in my subdivision, which I do very late at night, sometimes around 10:30 or so when it's dark. Always carry a flashlight with me. You know why? Because it's pitch black in these township subdivisions. I looked at the Bedford now. They had all of these crimes that are taking place along the border. I was kind of nervous one night. I saw a pickup truck with a yellow light come by and actually stopped, and I was really kind of nervous about that. And it turned out to be someone from the Veterans Township up here at the
Bedford Watch Group.
Yeah. And I got to see him, and he got to talk to me, and of course he knew I was retired state police. And one of the things he said to me, he says, you know, I drive around these subdivisions and there's no lights on. I don't know why people have garage lights on either side of the garage. They don't put them on. It's pitch black. And that's just an invitation to people to come around and to just break into your cars and walk around your property without anyone seeing them. I've started adding more lights. I put my porch lights on. I got my garage lights on. I've got lights on in the back. And with the price of bulbs anymore, you can pretty much run those lights pretty cheap. And I don't understand why we don't take that seriously. He even told me something that people leave their garage doors open at night. Now, I don't know if that's done accidentally or on purpose, but I don't know anybody who would want to leave a garage door open. So maybe Bedford ought to need to get into some kind of a program calling Brighten Up Bedford or something to kind of give us a little bit more light in these subdivisions. We certainly have street lights on. I see street lights out all the time. Right in front of people's homes, and nobody ever reports it because they're out all the time. It's been out for years. They just kind of flicker on and off and then go out. So I don't know why we don't take it more seriously, that if we want to fight the crime in this township, and we have citizens that are riding around in their own vehicles, on their own gas, and their own time, watching for suspicious people, that ought to be something that we as citizens ought to take seriously, that these people are doing a great service for us. But if people would start lighting up their houses at night, maybe that would deter some of the stuff that's going on here. So that's just for your information. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments?
Judy Hall, 9283 Valletta. And I want to talk about the yard waste situation. And all I really want to say is thank you. Thank you very much. My husband and I are new to this area. We lived in Washington Township for 40 years, and we moved here about a year and a half ago. And things are very different up here, new state, new township, the whole thing. But we had our leaves picked up at curbside in Washington Township. I understand this is a different township. So October 1st, yesterday, when we learned last week that yesterday Mulch King would be charging, the issue of charging was the problem. The amount being charged was really not, it's minuscule. But the focus of the township residents not having a place to take their yard waste seemed to be, in my opinion, lost between an argument with Mulch King and some of the governmental restrictions needed for their site plan, which I also agree with. The point of it is, I didn't really care what the township comes up with as long as the township would focus on the needs of the residents. And coming here tonight, I've talked to Mr. Peroni about it. I want to thank Mr. Clements, Mr. Frederick, Herschenberger, all of you, Peroni, Mr. Francis, Steiner, and Ms. Truvino.
Yes.
Sorry?
That's right.
All of you. I have been to a gazillion Washington Township meetings, and you can talk and have great arguments, but it kind of goes on deaf ears because there's 3 people that just say no. And they can say no. And you people haven't. And it means a lot. Thank you very, very much for focusing on the needs of the residents. And thank you very much, Paul, for really sticking out for us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any more comments from the public?
I have one more thing. In regards to the contract that you were to draw up, may I suggest that since this is a business, a private business, may I suggest that that contract be renewable on a limited basis, like annual, so that it's not open-ended forever and ever? Just so we see how the business takes off and how the residents like it and all that kind of stuff.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I really am done now.
Okay.
Careful, Trudy will get her timer out.
Oh, it's out.
Hello, my name is Robert Hall, and I'm the husband of Judy. And as a homeowner, I need a place to dispose of my grass clippings and my leaves. I do not want to burn. I deeply appreciate that you recognize the needs of the residents in this manner, and I want to thank you for the time that you spent in consideration on how to solve this problem. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments from the public? Okay, seeing none. Ms. Tingleberry?
I just want to commend the Halls for sharing their opinion and speaking, and thank you for moving to Bedford. You're the 2 people that have been the nicest to us for, I can't remember when, so I appreciate that. And I also want to say that we understand that a lot of people moving here from other areas think that we should run things, the way they have them in their area, garbage pickup. I can remember one time someone called me and said, I've been here almost 6 weeks and my garbage is piling up and nobody's been here to pick it up. Well, you have to contract, for your own garbage, and they get very upset because wherever they came from, it was in their taxes, and that's one of the reasons that our tax base or tax millage can be so low, because we don't have a lot of extra millages that we put, well, we can't put them on without a vote of the people, so I appreciate your comments. Okay, so I have 2 things with regard to, I've received some emails regarding Senate Bill 637, which has to do with the cable and these meetings that are going to be held. I would hope that we don't have people emailing back in support, my community supports this, without the board discussing whether we, as a board, we represent the community, and we're given that authority at being elected to make those decisions on behalf of the community. But for us to say my community supports this before we discuss it and decide it, I just think that that's wrong. So I'm hoping that we're not responding to those emails in one way or the other until this board. So I'd like to see it on the next agenda, unless it is. Okay, good. I was going to say I don't want to overcrowd the agenda, but so are there people going to that meeting regarding it? Because my point is, we shouldn't be sending someone to a meeting to speak on the township's behalf until we, as a board, discuss it. So that's just my concern. I'm hoping we're not sending people to that. And then the other thing is, I know this is on the information. I didn't want to pull it off to put it on a discussion. on the agenda, but the Liquor Control Commission, because we've had this other liquor permit that we've discussed tonight, I just have a couple questions because questions have been asked of me. This is a transfer from Arnold Jennings to the Corsons, is that correct? Have they purchased the facility? Is that liquor license staying at that?
It's only 50%. So
So-
he gave his 50% interest.
Okay, so
to
he had
them.
50% interest in the liquor permit and someone else had the other 50%? And so that is staying at that location?
Yes.
It's not moving?
As far as we know, this is the only information I have, but that's the way I read it, that it's staying there. They just bought his percentage from him.
Okay, and then I know we don't have the ability to approve or deny, just to give our, whether it meets the other parts of the code. But, so if this permit, if they end up deciding that they're going to close, let's just say as an example, because this was asked of me, if they're going to close A.J. Doolittle's, which I'm not saying, please don't put that on Facebook, that I said they are, they're not. But if that were to close, or any other establishment with a liquor license, would that come back to the township, or would that be, it's sold by the owners of the liquor license?
Correct.
Okay, okay, that was, I just wanted to clarify those things. And that was it, I'm done.
Okay.
I would say congratulations on the appointment, but to Mr. Peroni to SEMCOG, Regional Review, but I'm not saying that because I don't agree that we're in SEMCOG, so I'm just wanting you to know that.
You don't agree that we're in SEMCOG?
Oh,
I thought it was
SEMCOG.
CAMACOG.
No, you're right. Oh, congratulations, Paul, for being appointed to the Regional Review Committee
You gotta
on
get it
SEMCOG.
together, Nancy.
What?
I said, you gotta get it together.
Yeah, I know.
Mr. Steiner.
Well, I want to say welcome to the halls. I'm glad you're enjoying your first year and a half in Bedford and continue to enjoy that. The contract information that we're working on with Mr. Goldsmith, it does say December 31st will be this term only. So going forward, it will definitely be a board decision. It won't be an open-ended or greenfield type contract. So it will definitely be reviewed because, again, some of the numbers we've heard tonight, they could escalate. If the guy's getting your $2,500 a month, you're talking at $27,000 a year, and that's getting way out of the ballpark. So, yeah, it'll definitely be reviewed, and if it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. But we would need to come up with another solution, though, because our residents deserve some kind of solution for that. As Mr. Tisdale said, Mr. Mike Pasco passed away. He was a great resident of Bedford. He was actually one of my neighbors. Greeted us. He was, I think, probably second house in our subdivision. I was the fourth. And Mr. Pasco became what we called the mayor of Hickory Creek subdivision, and he was a super guy. And again, my condolences to his family as well. He was a great guy, and he put up a good fight. So other than that, as usual, be safe. And thanks to the men and women of our emergency services, they've had a lot of calls lately, including structure fires and things like that. So I can't say enough. Again, kudos to the chief and his team, and keep up the good work.
Mr. Clements?
My son asked me tonight when we were negotiating his homework if I would talk less, if I would make it home in time to tuck him in bed. So I'm going to yield my time to somebody else.
Mr. Frederick?
Stevens picks up our grass clippings and yard waste in the summer, up to 10 bags a week for $90 a year. And so we have, my wife fills them up every week. So we get a pretty good deal there. That's just another alternative. Sure, it costs you $90, but they pick it up, and I know it goes to a recycling facility. Paul, it's good see you're going to be on the Regional Review Committee. I served on that at one time. You will find that to be a very interesting committee because there's 180 units of government that are members there, and they're all trying to get the same part of $5 million every year. So you will see some very interesting projects come through that committee and for you to look at. We're trying our best to work with Mulch King, and I understand his issues, the one speaker, but we looked at thinking about studying, picking up leaves in the fall within the township years ago. And it just was not economically feasible to hire employees for about 3 months. What do you do with trucks? Where do you take it? How do you work with it? Just made no sense for us to try to do that. So these are the alternatives, and we're constantly trying to find opportunities for our citizens to take them someplace if they're willing to do that. That's it, Mr. Supervisor. I pass.
Okay, Mr. Francis?
You know, the real issue with that mulching is to reduce the burning that affects a lot of people. I'm one of them. We really can't, we have the authority, I think, to ban burning. But in my opinion, if we did that, we'd have to offer them a viable alternative. And we don't have one right now. This is the closest to it that we're trying. But the real issue to me is to reduce the amount of burning that affects people's health. And I think that's a worthy goal. We need to still keep working on that. We shoveled a lot of smoke tonight, but sometimes that's a good exercise because we talked about some important things. And it's all really boils down to a process. And I think we need to keep working on that because it's important. That's it.
Ms. Hirschberg?
I want to let everyone know that the ballots did go out today. If you requested an absentee ballot, we finally did get them. We got them out in the mail today. If you need a ballot still, please give our office a call or stop in. If you received a little card or an application saying that you didn't file, call us first before you send that in because a lot of those are duplications. They're sent by the different political parties. They're not coming from my office, even though they have my name and my phone number. Halloween. Years and years ago, the Township Board passed a resolution. Bedford Township Halloween is always on October 31st, no matter what the weather or anything else. It's always on the 31st. This year will not be an exception. October 31st is Halloween from 6 to 8 p.m. Last, the personnel manual I handed out to everyone. I only heard back from one person, Nancy. We're going to sit down. She has some questions, but if anybody else has anything, please still shoot me an email, and we'll discuss those. She had a good idea to bring a couple employees in on it, so I'm going to do that, see if they have any suggestions or anything. I also want to say condolences to Mike Pasco's family. We're really going to miss him coming into the Township Hall and waving to us on his way out saying, "Goodbye, beautiful ladies." He was a really sweet man, and we're going to miss him a lot. That's all.
Well, I won't go over everything I had to say about Mike Pasco. I didn't know him like all you guys did, but I did hear a lot of positive things about what a great community guy he was, so I'm sure he will be greatly missed. Mulch King, like I said, this got dropped in my lap too, you know, as far as, you know, I was under the assumption it was going to be free, you know, for the last year, and it was for a while. But I had a lot of phone calls this week, you know, on top of yours, and emails, and people coming by the township. Every time they went there, would come to the township, and you were one of them. And, you know, because it started out with the trailer, where he was charging it for a trailer load, and I got that, somebody's bringing a whole trailer load, you know, this is gonna cost, but then the conversation started going to where, well, we're gonna have to charge per bag due to the township requiring us to fix your approach. And I tried to explain, it's not the township requiring you to do the approach, it's the road commission. The approach is not in the right spot right now. It needs to be moved 150 feet towards Telegraph. So it is going to be moved. And he's got 15 days to start working on it, or he will be closed down. Now, I'm gonna be working with the road commission, you know, because we are, you know, gonna be contracting with him. We don't wanna see him closed down in 15 days, and we're contracting with him. So he is gonna be doing a lot of the work this weekend to show the road commission that he's going to be getting it done. But that's the road commission who requires them to do that approach. Now, ultimately, it's part of the Bedford Township site plan. So is the drainage, so is the site layout. But the drainage just comes from the drain commission, and the road commission stuff comes from the road commission. So it was the biggest surprise to me. So we had to react. And when I said $2,500 a month, it was for the next 2 months. So it would be, you know, if we contracted, we give them $2,500 and then $2,500 at the end of the next 2 months. And then the whole $15,000, when I said quarterly, I meant summer, spring, and fall type situation. You know, but that was my conversations with them. It would be $15,000 for the whole year for Bedford Township residents to bring anything that you need to bring over there. You know, excluding commercial, excluding tree stumps, and, you know, within reason. But we had to react, and that's why the board got a pile of information today, you know, tonight at the meeting, and didn't have much time. But ultimately, we were trying to do the right thing for the citizens. We don't think the citizens should have to pay, because if we don't contract with him, he is going to charge. And I get what you're saying, don't patronize him, but they're going to. People don't want to burn. People want a place to bring their leaves and grass. And now they have a spot, and I think it'll eventually work itself out, and I think it'll be a good thing and a good partnership, hopefully. I wanted to talk quickly about the fire chief. He was awarded with the Kiwanis Firefighter of the Year Award, and I wanted to congratulate him on that. This award was created by the Kiwanis Club of Monroe in 2000 in order to recognize the efforts of our county firefighters. We are proud to add Fire Chief Adam Massingill's name to the prestigious list of those who have received this honor in the past. So, congratulations, Chief. Well deserved. Well deserved. The EDC, we'll be bringing applications to the board. We have a really nice mix of candidates from the community, so that'll be coming. I know it's been a long wait for that, but we have slowly worked on it. We're finally ready. I wanted to explain something, a little misconfusion about the Lewis Avenue microsurface. This was a microsurface, not a repave. I kept seeing on Facebook, and I just couldn't keep up with all the comments. It was not a repaving job. It was a microsurface. And microsurface is a whole lot different. A microsurface just goes over top of the existing road to maintain it for the next 5 years. They plan on doing a mill and fill in 5 years. So this was just to keep it from getting potholes and whatever for the next 5 years. So if you had areas where it was dippy, it's still going to be dippy. It's just going to have the microsurface over top of it. What had happened was the ADA compliance and the concrete work cost so much they had to take it back from a double micro to a single micro to save money, to be able to meet their budget. So that's where it was. A double micro looks a lot better, but it had to be cut back to a single micro. I don't disagree with the residents that there was some situations with workers out there. Come to find out, this was their last job on their books. They're closed. So yeah, they were in and out. A couple more things, the striping is not done. When they did the striping, it was just for safety, and it pulls all the moisture up. They're gonna be doing another layer, what are you laughing at? They're gonna be doing another layer of striping here in another week or so. So look for that. Just so you guys know, this is normal. We mess with each other all the time, so.
We don't mess with each other.
It's a love-hate relationship we have here. The assessing, Rick, I wanted to thank you. Honestly, this guy works 60 hours a week and he's got a 2-hour drive to work, and he comes in on his day off on a Friday to work with the assessing department for how many hours you were there, but we really appreciate it. Honestly, you bring a lot to the table and a lot of expertise that I don't have in some areas, so I appreciate that, and they did too, so. Streamline, we are working, like I said, on a streamlining process with some of these ordinances that are in place with, and we met with Mr. Goldsmith and Tom Graham last week about a lot of our ordinance issues that we do have, and just continue to work toward them. We, and one of them is the festivals one where you have to go through the process, and so we're working on streamlining some of that stuff. The mold situation at the Temperance Fire Station, it's been sent to upper management. So we're waiting to hear back from the insurance company as to whether or not they're going to cover it or not. Just so everybody knows, the floors started buckling and they had mold all over everything in there. And so we had a company come in with an infrared to look at it. We had a company come in for the air conditioning. They can't find anything. So we're waiting on the insurance company to see what they're going to do about it. And then once we find out, I guess we'll talk about our next steps. So the Gordie Howe Bridge is set to start. They already are lining up trades for the project. So they're looking to have that completed in 2024. The bridge is going to be fully funded by the Canadian government. And I'm continuing to serve on the Pillars team. I'm the logistics captain for that group. They are doing a lot of good work in the community, a lot of like what we're doing with our EDC committee, just on a bigger level. They've identified properties, and they're finding out if the property owners are willing to sell. There's 8 properties that they identified, so I'm going to continue working on that with the BDC group and all the people from the county. So other than that, like Ms. Stinberry brought up, I was appointed, Mr. Frederick, I was appointed to the SEMCOG committee for the TAP grants and different things, so I'm excited to serve on that now. So if nobody has any further questions.
Just a quick one, and that is with respect to Mulch King and the road commission. He shouldn't really be surprised because, as Rick said, the BZA gave them 1,000 variances. The Planning Commission worked diligently to get their site plan in place to begin with quickly. He shouldn't be surprised that the Road Commission finally came along and says, look, here's what you have to do. I saw a truck try to pull in there the other day, and literally half of it went in the ditch trying to make the turn. So I understand he didn't expect to have to do that, but it was part of his site plan. It was required to be done, and he shouldn't be surprised at that. But caught us with our pants down too. So anyhow, thank you.
Okay, we stand adjourned.
Hey, who stole all these old things? Yours and...